Veterans Battalion.
What's going on, everyone? Veterans Battalion here in the war room, and we have some amazing people today. Unfortunately, I can't do the Colt, but this is Adam. We got Roland here, and obviously we have an amazing guest today. His name is Garth Massey, and he is
You can
just call him Colonel Massey.
There you go.
Because he's getting full bird, and the mission of Veterans Battalion is to bring greatness after service. And to me and to everyone here, greatness after service is really bringing as much value to you as possible. There's a lot of disconnects from post-service to transitioning into the civilian world, and we want to help you bridge the gap and bring as many amazing guests such as Colonel Massey, people that are doing wonderful things, and we just want to help you and give you as many tools as possible, because let's just be honest, it's fucking hard after you get out of service. There's no more colonel telling you what to do. There's no more platoon sergeant.
There's no more first sergeant keeping you in check, and making sure your shit's tight.
Absolutely. And you know what? And that's the thing is, people say, all right, school's over, and they rip off their backpack, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I don't know what to do anymore because no one's telling me how to do it. So,
at that point, you can't wait. You're in service. You're like, oh yeah, I can't wait. I've had enough of this shit, and
absolutely,
it's going to be so great. I'm going to go to school.
I can't wait to stop shaving. Yeah. I don't want to do anything. I want to get fat. I want to get lazy. And then you realize, hey, I think this is kind of sucks, and I should go back. And a lot of people don't know what to do.
Your best life shouldn't have been. I mean, even though it probably is going to be when you were in service wearing that uniform, but you're still going to have a great purpose, and you're going to create greatness after.
Yeah, you can't think like that. If you peaked when you hung up your uniform, shame on you. And I get, my wife doesn't like when I say shame on you, but if the best you ever were was that, at the end of 3.5, 4 years, 6 years, 20 years, if that was your best, then you took all that knowledge and you wasted it.
Absolutely.
Like you just threw it away because you spent 4 years minimum learning discipline and learning character and like figuring out how to solve things, and then you just
you can use that into creating so much value to either companies or to start your own company outside of service.
Yeah.
Right.
Most definitely.
And so you obviously have your company called Command Ready.
Yeah. And
you are an active duty reservist.
I'm a reservist. I'm being mobilized for another year, so I get to we're talking discipline. Like, I haven't deployed in a couple of years now. It's been a spell, and I got the call, and they're like, "Hey, we need you to stop everything, fold it up, and then show up down here and take over this job, and it's going to be 12 to 14 months." And I said, "Okay,
what went on through your mind?" Well, I always call you sir. I mean, it's just habit.
It's a habit, even when I'm emailing him.
What should we call him? Should we call you Garth?
Yeah, you call me Garth.
All right.
Yeah, you can call me Colonel if you're feeling froggy. Like that seems to be the theme today, But
we almost did attention on deck when you walked in.
It's these are force of habit. It's not about me. That's the system. That's the system.
So tell me,
were you like, oh damn, you heard that?
No, I knew it
was coming.
I didn't know it was coming. This was a unique circumstance where a guy had to leave a position early. Colonel, it's a slated spot, and they need it filled. It must be done, and so. But I knew the writing was on the wall, right? Like I'm newly promoted, and so you're the junior colonel in a world where they need guys as the watch officer in Afghanistan or running a plans team in Germany or any number of 20 other things. So you keep getting these emails going, looking for someone to fill this billet. So the wife and I had talked 6 months to a year ago and said, hey, look, it's going to happen. Like we're going to get called up. I'm out of Dwell. It's coming. It happened sooner than I thought, but because of a change in life circumstances for other people. So it's not going to be a bad deal. I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, it's a cool high level job. I'm managing training and development for tens of thousands of people. And so that'll be really, really cool. And it's not overseas. It's here in the States, which gives me the ability to kind of reach back and make sure my company doesn't fold. Cause I have one employee, Army guy, and he runs my youth programs. And then I have my workshops, and I have contracts that are signed. I mean, we can talk about that, but you got to fold the company up and then march. You go. But
so let's take a step back.
Yeah.
You're managing your company, right? You have your civilian life,
right?
And you get called to active duty.
Yes.
So tell us in your mind, like, how do you manage that type of commitment that that's possibly could always be there, but you're obviously not sure. You say, hey, it's time for us to possibly get called up, but mentally, how do you manage that? And in your mind say, all right, I'm going to grow this business and I'm going to be a father. And
I didn't even know how involved you were with Devil Pups in that program.
And your other nonprofits.
Yeah. I have a nonprofit called Veterans for American Business Development. So we operate off donations and grants, and we help veterans who want to start companies. Like, we give them money to file the DBA, or we give them counseling or advice on how to run a board, or how to start their marketing plan or their sales plan or their events planning.
That is freaking awesome.
We host networking events all over Los Angeles. You guys have come to several of them. We got SpaceX to host 30 vets, and we came down and they told us how they hire vets. Yeah. We got a website that lists veteran-friendly companies, like trying to get, if you want a job, you can start with Google, but that's a lot, or you could go to vabd.org, and there's 40, 50 companies that said, we will hire vets if you apply. Now, you're applying the same as anybody else, but they like hiring vets. So that's, check this site out.
I don't think I ever asked you, Garth, how did that come about? How did that nonprofit, how did that idea come about?
Yeah, we could go all over the board here. That came out because I'm a veteran and because I did a deployment. So I was in sales. I worked down in Orange County, and I deployed, and I came back, and I deployed, and I came back. And so every time I had to hand off my accounts to these other reps and then come back and then kind of horse trade what I could take back. And then some of them they developed while I was gone, because I'm gone for a year. And then, I was taking stuff back. So I was sitting down and talking with a buddy of mine who also was a Marine, and said, man, it would just be so great if there was a way to break back into these accounts faster, and we could do it through our combined service. I think we've been on this show one other time, and on it, I think I said, and I've said it, to other groups, but there's a beachhead. We're an amphibious fighting force, right? There's a beachhead on the soul of every other Marine. And so at the time I was talking to him, I'm like, man, it'd be cool if I could just call a guy and go, hey, you're a Marine, I'm a Marine. I'm selling this thing. You buy these things. Can we talk? And just give me 5 minutes. And that conversation was like, well, why don't we get together? And then we started having, breakfast, and we called a couple other vets, and we found, a Navy guy, and we let an Air Force guy in, and a bunch of Marines. And then that got to be 10, 20 people meeting for breakfast. We changed it to lunch. And then that got to be 50, 60 people. And we said, well, shoot, this is a kind of a big crowd. And then we realized, like, well, we have LA people in Orange County. So we broke it into 2 different things. And it was just a club. Like, it was just hey, you guys want to get lunch? And then we started doing annual events. We'd rent out aircraft hangars, and we'd have 100, 200 veterans come. We'd bring in, we had, the 1st Marine Division General came up and gave a keynote at the end of the year and just said, hey, thanks for, helping each other. And then it takes a lot of time. And we just got burned out. And I did another pump, and so we stopped doing it. And then in that downtime in that year, I wrote with help from a vet, actually, what's called it's a 1023, and it's the form you have to fill out to file for a nonprofit status. And a Marine who worked at Paul Hastings got $25,000 of pro bono legal work contributed to us. And Paul Hastings helped us write our nonprofit. We got approved in 6.5 weeks, which is like,
that's insane.
Insane fast.
Yeah.
We had no findings. The thing is clean. It's 100% volunteer. People who donate, 100% of the money goes to a veteran somehow. We host events or whatever. We just pay for everything. Awesome. Or we start businesses. And we wrote this 1023, so we had a nonprofit, and then we fidget with it every year. Like, okay, let's help this guy who wants to start a pool cleaning business. Or I was telling both of you, we started a company called Jarhead Journals. If you like journals and you like leather, check out jarheadjournals.com. You can buy a handmade leather journal by a veteran and his wife who are doing a side hustle, and they are the coolest books. So my company, Command Ready, every single participant in one of my workshops gets a handmade $100 leather journal with the little, machine gun insignia like stamped on it. And then that's what we use in the class to to teach how to collect your thoughts and write things down. And
it's awesome.
So all these, we got ideas all over the place, right? But that's the point. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there available to you. There's a lot of things you could be doing. And the question is, do you have the discipline? Do you have the initiative to start them? just to start, because what most people do is they sit on their thumbs and they go like, man,
it's just an idea.
Yeah.
It's just an idea. There's never any action that gets taken.
Because it's scary.
And
I call it, we know it, right? So we know these things. It's called the eve of battle.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, right? Like you're sitting on the line of departure, right? You got your cami paint on, you got your ammo checked, you've eaten your last chow.
Fear of the unknown.
You got your baby wipes ready, right? And you're on the border waiting to see what happens, And then in the middle of the night, like the order comes up on the radio, like we're moving. But until that movement starts, there's just this apprehensive pause of like, I don't know. And, doubt creeps in and friction shows up, and everybody in our lives are designed and trained from school to tell us no. Everything is designed to tell us no. And like, I think about it, like I was in the opening invasion into Iraq, and we were sitting on the hood of our Humvee like it was date night at the movies in an outdoor theater, just watching one of the battalions, like as they started moving up, waiting for them to get out of the way so we could start moving up. And we're just sitting there watching, as their headlights went off and they went black, and then they worked their way up to the border. And you just got to sit and breathe in and out, and the Scud missiles are coming over the radio, or some of them came kind of close, and you can't do anything about it. But there was that moment where they went, all right, it's our turn. And then you hop in the vehicle, you close the door, you push the gas, and suddenly you're like in motion. Well, that's what happened with all these things. Just like you guys, you guys sell houses on the side when you're not being Veterans Battalion, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who go, I wish I had an investment property. Well, okay, here's how you do it. Get off your ass. Like, go do it. It's going to be painful. You can't afford it. It's going to hurt sometimes. The market is going to change. It's never going to be the right time. You might not, like, all of those things are they're just objections.
But if you're trained properly and you have
properly
and you're disciplined enough.
Number one discipline.
Because that's what's so ironic is when you talk about that in a combat experience, when you got all that stuff, all that anticipation, it parallels completely with starting a business, starting any type of major project or anything that you want to do. You have all that apprehensiveness, and it comes
but
with.
Here's what I've found. The parable. We're humans are story based, right? Yeah. I could give you knowledge. I can't give you wisdom. If I tell you something, you can go, okay, cool. 4 + 4 is 8. Got it. Like, you have knowledge, right? But the wisdom of like when to use math, which there are times, right? The wisdom to know when is tough. You got to experience it and learn it. Well, vets have lived this stuff. We have life and world experience. And then we get out into the business world and we go like, whoa, we got to drop all our veteran stuff, and I got to integrate with civilian society. No, you have to take what we learned and then apply it to all these things. So if you call it eve of battle and suddenly you're like, you're right. Why am I sitting on my hands? Like, let's go. Yeah. Let's do it. Right. Yeah. Well, what does everybody else do? They find an acronym, they listen to, a Moto podcast about you're the best. Like, no, you're not. Yeah. Like you're a cog at best.
Yeah.
Right. But the way you overcome that is you put it in terms you understand, through a story you understand, and then you apply discipline, like Adam said, right? And that discipline is about, overcoming all the things that stop inertia. And look at boot camp or basic training, or I don't know what the Air Force calls it. I picked on the Air Force twice today. Like
little kind of a small jab, but it was.
The Air Force.
I noticed
awesome.
it.
Transformers could not win their movies without the Air Force. They say the line.
No comment.
In the movie. No, I love the Air Force.
Aim high.
I love the A-10s. But whatever you went through, one of the first things they do is they strip out I. You guys remember, right? Like, you're not allowed to say I. In my case, it was, this candidate, right? But you guys, this recruit, right? We are not allowed to say I. And in boot camp, that makes sense. Yeah. And you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. We're part of a team. Mm-hmm. And then we get back out to the civilian world and look around. Look at every valedictorian speech out there, right? Oh, you're so special. The universe is going to cave itself around meeting your... What do we tell them? Click valedictorian speeches on YouTube, and it's, oh, find your passion. Like, I'm all about passion. That's great. But like, you get passion because you do something that is marginally interesting, and then you get good at it. And then you get really good at it. And then suddenly you realize, because you're so good at it, you're passionate about it. Like, nobody likes taking apart and putting together a rifle. But when you get fast, suddenly you're passionate about it. And you want to race people because you're like, I want to kind of kick your butt here at this. Like, do things.
You think a part of it is the challenge?
I think so.
It's the challenge.
I think so. And I think
Yeah.
that we spend too much of our time, kind of like what you said in the very beginning. We spend
Yeah.
too much of our time with a curriculum and a syllabus.
Yeah.
So everything about your life is individual based, individual focused, all through school into your first job. And until you reach a leadership position, teamwork is just kind of a concept that we throw around.
Yeah.
So, if you study hard, you take a test. If you do well on the test, you do well on placement exams. You do well on exams, maybe you get into college. You do well in a college, you get a good resume. Like all of these things are individual based.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you were on a sports team that was team oriented a little bit, right? And you learn concepts through sports that aren't taught in the school, because school's about individual performance to get to excellence. And then you get out into the workplace, and then suddenly teamwork and collaboration. I mean, Command Ready teaches leadership based on squad leader school, because in the corporate America environment, they're not getting it anywhere else. I mean, you can read Good to Great, which is a great book, by the way, right? But you're not getting teamwork anywhere else because your whole life has been about individual excellence.
Yep.
Right. Now, the military strips that I out. But then when we finish our first enlistment or our first, set of years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, we forget that no, that concept actually works for my entire life. It's not just because I was joining the military. Look around. Life is hard. I mean, I've listened to your guys' podcast a couple times. There are people out there struggling, and we see them, right? The suicide thing is just awful. And we lost a Marine yesterday, retired Marine. He's been struggling for months. I'm trying to get him into the Sparta Project, which is a great nonprofit for guys who need, girls, guys, veterans who need 5 days of just deep dive, like break down your life and put yourself back together, who are struggling.
And what's that called?
It's called the Sparta Project. I think it's spartaproject.org. It's a 5-day, it's free for any vet. They run it like 3 or 4 times a year. And you do everything from like high ropes courses to interacting with wolves to working on journaling and I've sent Marines. I've gotten a chance to work with these guys.
So how did
that's
so was this
awesome.
a Marine that you lost yesterday?
So he was not one of my Marines. A guy who does my pool stuff came to me and was like, "Hey, I know you're a Marine," and I got my neighbor and I talked to him all the time and he's really sad. I'm like, "Dude, have him call me." And then he came back next week and was like, "Hey," he says, "what do I want to talk to an officer for?" I'm like, "Okay, give him the Sparta Project. There's a cohort coming up. Get him. It's free. Send him to this class." He came back and said, "Oh, not enough time." And then it's been 3-4 weeks. And so the pool guy showed up the other day and said he swallowed his 38. He went down to the VA and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking my life." And the VA said, "Okay, sit down. We'll get somebody." And he heard, "Nah, we don't have time for you." So he never sat down. He turned around. He walked out of the
You're
building.
shitting me. They didn't run and grab him?
No. And I wasn't there. I don't know the story. I'm not saying the VA did anything wrong. Like if a guy came up to you, you're sitting at the counter and said, "I'm thinking about taking my life," you'd say, "Okay, hold still." And then you'd go get somebody. But in the time of going and getting somebody, he walked out. Now I think he went in, I don't know him. But the way the story's being told, he went in with the intent of like waving a flag real quick to let people know. But he went back to his house and he took his life. But, and he's been out for years. He's, middle-aged dude who just struggling. And there's a lot of that out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you guys talk about it a lot and you see it posted on social media, but it's hard in real time. It's hard. But I think a lot of that is because we get out from this team and we find ourselves in a world where there is no syllabus, there's no individual performance because there is no curriculum. You don't have to take, Baking Cookies 101 and Mathematics 202 or whatever. Nobody is telling us what the steps are. No gunny has said, "Be on green tomorrow, 07 on the grinder, and we're going to town," right? No one is publishing a schedule.
No
and
TNR manual.
So we get out with this whole sense of individualism, which is what they teach us in our country. It's part of the Western civilization. And then you look around and it feels lonely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I get it, right? Like I've started a company, I have a nonprofit, I got a big family, I got all this stuff going on, but sometimes it feels lonely because we have come up in a system where you have to be individually focused and following a checklist. I got no checklist. I mean, if I didn't have this morning, I could wake up this morning and kind of do nothing all day. Now, I would very quickly run out of cash, right? But I think veterans come with a natural advantage if they could realize it.
Right.
And the advantage is, at some point in your life, you learn teamwork. The shame is that you joke like, yeah, we're not going to shave, and the two of you could use a razor. But you get up in the morning, you're like, I'm not gonna shave today. I'm gonna grow my hair out. I'm gonna wear this ratty old T-shirt. I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna party. I'm gonna whatever the stuff is. That's cool.
Yeah.
But a life worth living is disciplined, and the military gave it to you. We all know what it takes to figure out a morning routine, to figure out hey, I got to build the syllabus for my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that requires ownership. And you have to take ownership and realize this is my life, and I get to write the curriculum. I get to create the syllabus. I put whatever explanation.
Mm-hmm.
The second you figure that out is the day that you go, you know what? Hey, I want to start a business. I can do it. All the resources are there. You want money? The money is there. I mean, you can find what you need to get started.
Yeah.
And places like this and other organizations are there to help you. I mean, the small business, the SBA is begging for veterans to come down. They have grants and scholarships.
Why does it seem so hard to get those?
I don't know the actual process of getting. I've never taken money from the SBA, but I know they are trying to get people to take loans, take grants. There's Vetrepreneur, there's entrepreneur things. The WeWork has a great veterans program, veterans in residence.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to get in because you have to do the bureaucratic paperwork of filing. But that's blocking and tackling the moment you realize, hey, I own the curriculum for my life.
Mm-hmm.
I get to make the decisions. And you have that epiphany, then do the work, right? And that's where we get back to like the eve of battle. The doing the work. I have a buddy, he says ACT, right? And ACT stands for action changes things. So whatever it is, once you realize you own it, start doing stuff, and then it just starts clicking.
Which is why we always say you got to be your own platoon sergeant, right? Of your own life.
Right.
Because when you go from this we, and then all of a sudden you're back into the I world,
right?
Yeah. You're kind of lost, and you need to take ownership.
The environment
of your own life,
which
everything
is pitiful
you do.
though, because like I have such. I feel a connection with all vets. I really do believe that whole beachhead thing, right? I dig it. I like when people come up and tell me they're a vet. Now, when they start wandering off on some story about how, the first sergeant never treated me, okay, then I lose. So lose patience, right?
Okay, but, so now that you're a colonel and you're here in the war room, I'm gonna ask you some questions in regards to, because because we're obviously enlisted, and you're an officer.
Obviously not, yeah.
Right, and by the way, how was it using our head over here? It wasn't really like officer style, but it was nice, right? It was clean. It was decent.
You run a very nice office.
Hey, thank you very much. So, so obviously there's a difference. Now this is not to be disrespectful in any way.
Sure.
There's a difference between officers and enlisted. Okay. When we go to the chow hall as grunts, right? We're in the chow hall. We're sitting there all filthy. And there's like a beautiful, like sectioned off area for the officers with the beautiful napkins folded. We're like, what the hell is this shit? Look at this guy right here, right? Do you feel like a lot of times why he says, I don't want to talk to an officer, right? Do you feel that same thing happen in the civilian world with your business and the things that you're running?
It definitely happens in the civilian world.
But here's the thing. I know you, and I know that you were in the trenches, right? And you handle your leadership. You can handle your business like you did in CAT, right? And I know that when I did the online training, you even mentioned CAT, right? You mentioned like a scenario of how you walked the line one time and you felt like the troops, I would say, right? The Marines didn't feel so, they didn't have the right mentality, and you kind of questioned
I thought
yourself.
I pissed them off because they weren't talking to me like they normally did.
Right.
Your question, so look, there's a long history in the business world of the corner office, the fancy parking spot, the nicer car. There's a joke about like, the guy comes up and says, to the boss, like, oh, that's a really nice, Lamborghini or whatever it is you got out there. And how do I get that? And the guy goes, or how do I get to this place? And he goes, well, you work really hard, you make your quota, you exceed your budget, you do kind of great stuff, and I'll be able to buy another one next year, right? Because the leader is seen as this dude with his foot on a rock and a sword drawn, and they're pointing at the North Star, and that that's leadership. You look like Captain Morgan or something, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a false image, and I call it the siren's call of leadership. Like, we think you have to play that role and act it out. And it's reinforced in everything because, we're a consumer society. So people with more money buy the fancier stuff. And we have a lot of people who want to start businesses that are wasting money on swag or bling or things they don't need,
Right.
to run a business. But they think it's part of the process, right? Because there's one too many guys making instant millionaire videos on Instagram where they're like, you see these 3 cars? Like, I bought these and this is my house. And now I'm going to show you a foolproof system. There's no silver bullet. There's no foolproof. So like you don't get to jump the hard work. Like the message should be, hey, wake up, take the discipline that you have been taught, apply it to your own life like you wanted to lead on purpose, or you wanted to lead a life with purpose. Instead of saying, oh, I want my passion, like, great, recognize that life is hard, work is hard, jobs are hard, your family is hard. You have got to invest in your spouse. You have to invest in your kids. And by the way, that's tiring and exhausting. And then we screw it up because in our culture, we no longer have a place where men can gather around, right? Because, masculinity is bad and all these things. It used to be we'd go on a hunt or a gathering, or we would work on something or build something. And then we would come together in the evening. Nobody had phones. There'd be a fire going, and we would do what these podcasts have become. We'd talk about like our day, and we would share our thoughts and our ideas. And like the Native American Indians, like you could brag and stretch the truth as much as you wanted about the hunt, but you got to share the emotion. And we don't gather around. And I think veterans especially need to do that too, because at the end of the day, if you're, you're tired, right? The work was hard, the family's hard. I'm always the one who's giving. I'm always the one who's doing. And the answer is, yeah. And you know what? That's what character building is all about. And it's that repression of your base desires to do something that you know is right, that gives you claim to, being masculine or being a leader or being, because this isn't just men. Like, I don't mean masculine in a just men way. I mean, like, if you are denying your base desire to be lazy or to be in homeostasis, which humans, organisms want, we want balance and we want it to be comfortable. But the reality is, the second you shoot for that, you get worse.
Yeah.
Right. So we should be pushing to be uncomfortable. We should be pushing to work against our base desires or inner desires, because in that is character. In the discipline is where you find humility.
So
and all these great things.
So in regards to the officer enlisted thing, it kind of follows in business, right?
Yes.
So even myself, right? Where, how do you lead someone where they'll immediately have a presence in front of them that you are, you're an officer, so you don't know what it's like to be a lance corporal. Like, there's obviously a big gap between a colonel and lance corporal, and they know that. And then they're how do you bridge that gap?
Well, they shut down.
Like,
so one, I'll take your chow hall up a notch. I was stationed in Pohang in Korea, and we lived on the rock base as a company.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. We would get up, we'd go to the chow hall, and they would serve us this, this Korean food, and there was tablecloths and all this stuff. And the Marines were complaining, and they're like, this sucks. We need to get off this base. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this is great. Like, we get up, we PT, the food's fantastic. And they're like, time out, sir. What are you talking about? The food's fantastic. It's awful. So I went down to their chow hall, and they're a conscript army, right? So every, Korean has to serve. And I went down to the chow hall, and they got these 55-gallon wood barrels with fish heads and seaweed and just chunks of meat floating in them. And what the Marines were getting is they would get a bowl, and they would walk through the line, and they would ladle out whatever they got, and that was their meal. And so you could literally get a fish head in a bowl of broth with seaweed, and that was their food. And they're like, yeah, you just eat the meat parts off it. And I'm like going, I left waiters and napkins and tablecloth, and, oh, would you like some of this? We'll bring it to you, kind of stuff. And I walked down, and the poor Marines are just, so we instantly got them MREs, and we upgraded their chow to make it livable. But
it's pretty bad
it was
when
different.
MREs are an upgrade,
right?
The chow's shit.
Right? Hey, I don't know if anybody listening ever did, the rock chow hall, but this is early 90s, and but They're just eating out of a wood drum. So yes, it's different. How do you what was the question?
How do you bridge that
So how do you
gap?
bridge that gap to where, you know, they believe in you and they don't think that you
And
just,
this can be,
you don't know what you're talking
this
about.
can be civilian as well.
I think
when
that's
you're
the leader's
CEO.
job. I think that's my
Yep.
job. So I think we talked about it last time. When I was a battalion commander, my favorite game, anybody who was in my unit maybe saw me do this. I would cover my name tape and walk up to a lance corporal or below and say, you know, in the chow line, and just ask him like, hey, do you know who I am? And I'm standing with a sergeant major. And they go, no, sir. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then the corporal or sergeant behind him be like, hey, his picture's on the building. Like, you know, when you walk in the door, he's that guy. And they go, no, I know who you are. And I take my name tag off, be like, that's cool. And then one time I pointed to the oak leaf on my collar and I said, hey, do you know what this is? And a Marine actually said, yeah, I have no idea, sir. Like I
You're
learned,
shitting me.
He
Really?
goes, I learned up through, I know, you were an NCO, like you got to a place where you cared. He said, I learned up through captain because that's what was at boot camp. I know it's shiny and I probably shouldn't talk to you. And that's where he stopped. So one, failure of the system, but two, like there are always things beyond our scope, right? Like, you know, I can tell you some of the chain of command. I don't know all the senators and, you know, even just in our state, much less in all of federal government. You know, I know the ones related sort of to my district, but there's always something beyond your area of operation, right?
Sure.
And we live tactically. Some people think, who are starting businesses, operationally, and a very rare group of people can think strategically, right? And if you want to put it in just grunt language, like there is the tactics, the street you're fighting on, where's my rifle pointed, who's covering my six, all that stuff. Then there's the area of operation. My unit is here. I'm on this street and it supports that street. And now I got a bigger picture. And then there's just this area of interest. Like if a Marine unit 4 towns over, you know, gets engaged in a firefight, is that going to trigger shooting here? And do I know and do I care? And can I do anything about it? Like, so at every level, there's always something a little further out and a little further out, right? And so as you grow, as you age, as you learn, right? If you're a continuous learner, like if you're always looking for ways to add to the body of knowledge, your spheres of influence get bigger. And so even your tactical, like we're right here now doing a podcast, which is very tactical, but the things we're talking about are actually from a much bigger sphere. So we might be talking the tactics, and we started by adjusting the mics and checking the sound and stuff. But really, operationally and influence people listening to this, hopefully someone out there is like, you know, I should call him. Maybe I can get $500 and I'll file my DBA and create a website. Or maybe they'll go, you know, maybe I should get off my butt and do something with my life. Or maybe I should wake up and actually exercise first every day. And you know, I mean, you guys look burly with your little beards, and that's awesome. And, you know, good on you. And I have no problem with it. But, you know, maybe they wake up and say, hey, maybe I've been sitting around too long and
take a razor to my face.
It's the eve of battle. I tell you what, I mean, you know, I'm a tad older than you guys. Like I have friends who have been fired and lost jobs. And like every time it happens, the one thing I tell people, and I got fired once. I'll tell you about that story. Actually, I got fired 3 times now I think about it. I got fired from Pizzeria Uno and a pet store once too. I don't usually count those.
No shit.
But I was, you know, 15.
Were you smart ass?
Oh, I was still a smart ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. I deserved it. Yeah. You know, I deserved it. One, I didn't stack dog food right. And then the other one, well, I'll save that for another time. But the point is, like, there are things you can influence beyond your current sphere. And the only way to get to them is to keep learning. Like you have got to keep learning. And you had an advantage by being a vet, but coming out and saying, hey, I'm going to go to college, use my GI Bill. Like that's a crutch. Like, hey, do it. Yeah, great. Go get more education. But there's no box you can check that allows you to stop for the rest of your lives. We live too long. Like the idea that 4 years of college will prepare you for what used to be a 20-year career, but is now, 40 years we're going to work. So, you know, you got out, you enlisted, you do 4 years, you're 22, 23, right? And then you go to college, maybe you get an AA degree, maybe you get a 4-year degree, right? So now what? You're 26. And then that's going to be enough information to carry you till you're 65, 70 years old, which is what people are. No way. And the only thing we keep saying it is the discipline. Like, all right, cool. But what are you reading now? Don't like to read books? Well, great. Go to my site, download video training, like watch a video once a month, 8-minute video once a month, listen to a podcast, once a week.
So that leads me to an excellent question.
Okay.
Tell the people listening, what is your daily routine in a daily life, discipline wise?
So there's two parts to it. One, I don't get to say like, I crush it every day. I don't. There are days I totally screw it up, but I do something I call the last 3 minutes. And I got the idea because I read this parenting book or whatever that said the most important time you spend with your kids is the first 5 minutes when they wake up, the last 5 minutes before they go to bed, and the first 5 minutes of your evening meal, like when you sit down to dinner together, right? And, they had explanations for all this. And I started looking at it, and I'm like, my last 5 minutes with my kids, and I have 6 kids, but a lot of that last 5 minutes is yelling at them for not having their homework ready or not having their clothes laid out or go to bed comes up a lot. And I realized like, that's not how I want to end my day with my kids. Yeah. So I changed it to the last 3 minutes, and I sat down very solemnly with my 15-year-old, my 12-year-old, and my 10-year-old. We all shook hands and said, we're going to help each other wake up right. And so the last thing I do before they go to bed is each of us has a notepad or journal or whatever, and we write down how we're going to start our day. And so here are the rules. Everything you write down must be accomplished within an hour. So you can't say like, I'm going to read War and Peace, because you can't get it done in an hour. You are not allowed to wake up earlier to go get it done. Like this is not like now if you wake up at 4 o'clock, you're going to defeat the enemy. If you get up at 5, still get up at 5. You get up at 6, still get up at 6. You get up at 8, still get up at 8. But it's how you're going to spend the first hour of your day with intentionality, like on purpose. So my morning, I get up, I go for a run or some sort of workout. Today was 4.66 miles around the neighborhood.
You can say Peloton.
I did not. Today I ran.
Oh, that's late.
I'm Pelotoning this afternoon.
Oh, this afternoon. Okay.
Yeah, I'm advertising, branding for
2
Peloton.
a day.
Today's a double day.
You must be on 75 hard.
It's PFT season. It's PFT season. I got to get ready. I got to knock it out. I'm old enough that I get to row, and I did a test row the other day. Crushed it. So totally going to max it out.
Nice.
So PT, right? And then I'm a coffee drinker, so I make coffee. And when we started doing this, I bought a wicker chair and I put it on my front porch. And I will go sit on the front porch and drink 1 cup of coffee. And I bring a book out because I have many. And but all I'm shooting for is 10 pages. I just got to read 10 pages.
So that's our morning.
Is that your morning?
That's our routine. That
awesome.
We're in the middle of this challenge that really kind of goes in hand with what you're talking about. The challenge, building the self-discipline to break out of our comfort zones,
right.
And that's when you become extraordinary. Right. And it's like just 5 simple steps.
What time do you wake up in the morning, by the way?
Today was 4:50. The run group I ran with starts at 5:10. 5:10, we're feet on the street.
I'm 4:50. I'm up downstairs doing my coffee by 5.
Yeah. Now, tomorrow, my run starts at 6. I got a different group. I have different groups that I meet
do?
with. Yeah.
Nice.
So there's a couple things. What's your thing called?
75 hard.
75 hard.
75 hard.
Yeah. Sounds.
There's another one out there called Exodus 90. There's the the P90X. There's there's a 40-day challenge thing. There's the 21-day primal thing. Whatever you do, great, go do it. We are humans, are social creatures. We have open limbic systems. We connect with other people, right? So I find you need a support system. So I got a group I run with on Wednesdays. I got a different group on Fridays. I got a different group on Thursdays. I got a guy that, like the Peloton thing today. Hey, we're getting to be old men, so we like to do like softer workouts. So we do the Peloton, but we'll do battle ropes and kettlebells.
But the most important thing,
I have a plan and I have a network.
You have a plan, but you also have that discipline. Because even if you have those people, you can easily just turn off your phone.
Right. You
can easily just be like, you know what, I'm just going to go to bed. Yeah. Or I'm going to lay around all day and do nothing.
And here's the thing. Some days you do. Some days you do. And we tend, veterans, but men too, like we tend to beat ourselves up. And I had a buddy one time, we were talking about like eating right and diet and, primal and keto and all this other stuff. And he had a great line. He's like, hey, don't let one meal ruin your day and let that day ruin your week. And I started thinking about every diet or routine or workout or thing that I've ever done. You miss a little and then you start beating yourself up.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I already had, a cookie. I might as well have ice cream. And then the whole day's gone. And then you wake up the next day and you're like,
pizza.
I burned that whole thing. And, now there's a party. I might as well just eat everything. And next thing you know, it's been 8 days since you ate right. And you look around going like, why isn't this diet working? You go, oh yeah. Cause you allow one meal to ruin the day, one day to ruin the week, and then it falls apart.
Absolutely.
So cut yourself some slack. Like, hey, if you misstep, if you trip up, like, it's cool. Cut yourself a little slack. Your goal is to be right 80% of the time. Yeah. So, if I just wake up and just can't do it, okay, I didn't work out. I'll make it up in the afternoon, or I skipped a day. Fine, but tomorrow I got to get up. So, the phrase they use is like, be the best version of you every day. So every day you're just trying to be the best version of you. That doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes or miss things. And stop beating yourselves up, vets. Stop beating yourselves up.
See, like, that's not with our program. It's we can't miss a day. Yeah.
However, ours is 75, and then after that you can go back to. The thing is this is more of a boot camp.
This
is more of a boot camp.
It's not just fitness,
because there's a lot of lazy motherfuckers out there.
But we
excuse
do
my language, sir.
No, we do well when we have that structure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So great. Put it in there. Artificiality. I mean, the best programs I've ever done, I call a couple of other dads in the neighborhood and go, all right, here's what we're going to do. And I got a group every Monday morning. We send our weight out to each other and we talk a lot of trash. And I love it.
Nice.
I love it. And some days it's a little embarrassing. You put on weight or you take off weight or whatever, but we do well in community. So I have networks that do that. So at night I sit down with my boys, and that's my community there. And we sit down at the table, and like, my kid, one of his things was,
by the way, amazing kids.
Oh yeah, you met him. That's right. You met him. Two
firm handshake, look you in the eye, like, you're doing a great job.
Well, the big one hates that I say this, but one of the things he wrote down in his journal was, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to take a shower and use deodorant. And I was like, I did that. I started laughing, and I thought, this is bull, man. Put something real down on your list, because immediately we think, go harder, do more. And then it occurred to me, like, he's 15. Like, he only just started really stinking about a year ago, right? And I realized, like, he doesn't have any habits that are grooming. And I'm laughing at him because I'm like, of course you're using deodorant. No, there's no of course. He has no habits. Yeah. So I thought, you know what? Reinforce it. So I stopped my laugh. I shook his hand and said, all right, I'm going to ask you. And when we check on each other the next, because you write them down. We allow 4 things. So you pick the first 4 things you're going to do when you wake up. Mm-hmm. We do it as a commitment with each other in the last 3 minutes of the day. Right before you go to bed, sit down with you, and I'll say, all right, what are the first 4 things? I'm going to wake up, I'm going to run, I'm going to take a shower and use deodorant. I'm going to, say a prayer, and I'm going to eat Cheerios, whatever his kid thing is that he does, right? And so I go, cool. And then the next day, he does those things and he checks them off. And either when we sit down that evening or during the day, I'll be like, hey, did you get it done? So there's that accountability, which we love, right?
Yeah.
And what I realized is pretty soon he stopped putting take a shower and use deodorant. It's not on his list anymore. Because he's doing it.
It's now a habit.
It's a habit. And now he does it, and thank goodness. But he does it without thinking about it. Yeah. Well, it's like that in our whole lives. The problem is we say, okay, I want to start a business. I want to, get back in shape. I want to clean up my life, hoorah, 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 right? So we say we're going to do all these things. We come up with a list of 15 things we're going to do. We're like, by God, Monday it starts. And we make it, Wednesday at best, usually, Tuesday, right? And there's just too much stuff. So pick one thing. Pick one thing until you do it 80% of the time, and then pick another one thing. You're not going for an 80% shift in who you are. You're going for a 1% improvement every day. The process is the goal, right? Every day. So you do your 75 hard.
Yeah.
Cool. At the end of the 75 hard, pick something else and do that for a little while. Like, you have your whole life to live. You might as well be doing something, and you should do something that is hard, because we build character by overcoming our base nature and working against our instinct. Our instinct is to sit and be lazy and eat, Rocky Road ice cream or whatever. I don't know, whatever people's jam is, right?
Yeah.
But you achieve greatness by overcoming that. And you don't have to be the president of the United States. You don't have to, win 4 stars or do whatever. You can achieve greatness in your life, and from that find passion by overcoming your instinct, to do it the easy way or do it the lazy way or do it the whatever.
Absolutely.
So pick up one idea, one thing, and start it now. One thing. And just shoot for a 1% sea change every single day.
Awesome. What's your favorite book?
Right now, I'm actually reading a book. I haven't finished. I'm chapter 4. It's called The Road to Character. I do about 2 books a month. And I'm digging it right now. And it talks a lot about this. So, you're getting some of it just from me reading. It's called The Road to Character. A book that resonated that I really liked that Marines like is Genghis Khan. And it's the historical story of Genghis Khan. It's a big read. Audible's a great way to get through that one. But you want to understand where like a war college came from and tank warfare and real combined arms and tactics and strategy. Like Genghis Khan was total badass. Like,
Nice.
and he was the first tank. I mean, they're on horses, mobility, shooting arrows, like firepower, right? And then they were engaging them as a maneuver force. So they would dance around the outsides. And this book, Genghis Khan, breaks down kind of some of the tactics. Brilliant. And they used, the Middle Ages, we had knighthood, and we think of knighthood as this, chivalrous, really great thing, but it was a very violent, very crazy time. But part of it was that knight's code, and Genghis Khan and his troops understood this about Europe when they got there. And so they would just taunt them, and then the knights would charge them, and then they would lose to them, and guys would get killed, right, in a retreating battle against these knights. But the knights couldn't fight for very long because they're in armor on big horses, and they would ride in a retreating, losing battle as the knights gained honor and glory, charging off away from the castle and everyone cheering for them. And then they'd get around the bend, and the Huns would switch horses, and then the reinforcements would hit. They'd kill all the knights. They'd wait an hour, and then they'd ride back up to the castle gate and be like, who else you got? And they would drain a castle of all its knights out of pride.
Wow.
Because they cared about winning. They didn't care about they had humility. They're like, we don't care how we win. We're just going to win. And there's a ton of stories in there. I really dig that history. Like
So you mentioned something about, which is kind of hit me, is people really, you stop learning at like, let's say 26, 27, if you do get a bachelor's or if you carry on to higher education.
Yeah.
How important is self-improvement and self-learning? Because for you, like for me, I was one of those, like, I'd rather be at the gym. I'd rather spend 2 hours at the gym and 2 hours reading.
Right.
But now as I'm getting older, like I love reading and I love learning more. And that to me is like, it gives me, not only does it give me knowledge, but it gives me the firepower to keep going and to do great things.
I think it's a sphere of influence thing. Like your body, I mean, we can do anything the mind can see, the body can achieve, all that greatness. But the reality is there are limits to what your body can do. What your mind can do is really not as limited. So when you're young and you feel great and you're going to live forever, yeah, sure, go to the gym, get strong, get the washboard abs, all that coolness, right? That's awesome. But that's not going to carry you through your life. Like at some point, you better know how to play the game.
Sure.
And so age and time have a way of humbling us physically, and then people eventually learn to read again. But there's some scary stats out there. They tell us that the average American will read one nonfiction book in their life after they graduate school, whatever it is, college or high school. One nonfiction book.
That's average American?
The average American. That's terrifying.
It's horrible.
Right? State of California. Of all the high school graduates in the state of California, I mean, the number one thing we tell kids to do is go to college, right? And join the Marine Corps. Go to college. and the number one thing we tell them to do, and every high school graduation brochure, it lists all the colleges the kids got into, all that. Okay, state of California, 12.5% of high school graduates will get their 4-year college degree within 7 years of graduating.
That's horrible.
It's awful. But where do we invest our time, money, and advertising? Go to college, go to college, go to college. And what's happening to them? Freshman year, poof, gone. Sometimes sophomore year, right? Or they run off to a junior college and they don't even complete. Maybe they get a 2-year degree, but they're not getting 4-year degrees.
That makes no sense to me.
87.5% of high school graduates are not getting a 4-year degree in the first 7 years after they get out of school. And where do we spend? It's a lie. Like we got the GI Bill, that's great. But this whole education thing is this huge push and focus. And what we really need is discipline. And the people who are winning are the vets. Why are there so many veteran-owned businesses? Look at the stats. Like the percentage of veteran-owned businesses, small businesses versus just regular small businesses is staggering. And yet, I think it's like 10 or 15% of veterans actually start a business. But veteran-owned small businesses, like 30, 40% of all the all the small businesses in America are run by veterans. Mm-hmm. Like, somewhere in there, you got to go, wait a minute, what's going on?
What
Like,
am I
What's
really
the
doing
common
here?
denominator? It's
a very tiny percentage of us as vets are starting a business, and go do it. It's awesome. It'll, you know, it might destroy you, but it'll also teach you a ton.
yeah.
A very small percentage of us are starting a business, but a huge percentage of small businesses are run by vets. Well, what is it that they have that makes them able to survive that first year where 70, 80% of businesses
Discipline
go
and
under?
structure.
Right there.
Yeah.
The discipline to overcome what you want and what is easy for what you need and what you hope to achieve. And you can teach it, but you really
Because
have to live
ultimately, if you're a vet and you complete 4 years, whatever your term is, you have it. You know, you may think that you don't have it anymore because that was the best time of your life, but you have it.
it. No, it's there, but you got to let it out.
It's there.
And what we do is we repress it, right? So we say, hey, look, I learned XYZ in service, and but now I want to be a civilian, so I can't do that anymore.
They want to
Wait a minute, what?
relax.
And then, you know, and then you get put in charge of hey, I want you to plan out this thing. And we forget, like, we already learned SMEAC. We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
Like, SMEAC works. The 5-paragraph order works, and it works in
yeah.
business. Why? Well, because the military, and in particular the Marine Corps, but the military and business schools have been swapping stories for a long time now. I mean, Train the Industry was a program that was put together by MacArthur to get Japan's industrial group back up and running. And they grabbed staff officers off his staff and said, go get those factories going. And they went, well, we don't know how to do that. They said, great. Well, take the squad leader's manual, build it up like a battalion, and get it running, right?
You can take any business with a SMEAC, and you can just all you have to do is plug it in, and there you have a successful business.
Yeah. I mean, funding, right? So, okay, you want to start a business, and people go, well, make a business plan. One, you only need a business plan if you need investors or bank money, right? If you want to start a business, go start a business. You don't need a business plan to teach piano lessons after school for money, right? You need a plan, but, you know, famously, as it has been said by many, it's the planning that matters, not the plan, right?
Yeah.
So what you need a business plan for is if you want to get cash. Now, SMEAC, the 5-paragraph order, that whole idea of like, hey, understand my surroundings, understand what I'm trying to do, right? Be able to articulate it in tasks, and then be able to describe what resources I need and how am I going to communicate wins, losses, you know, whatever. If you got those basic areas covered, you're killing it. And if you could write it down, you're doing phenomenal stuff. But a lot of vets think, well, you know, that was a tool for the military, I shouldn't be using it. I mean, we didn't talk about it. My whole program, Command Ready, the whole program is because I was running for a decade sales teams, and I was paying big money for trainers to go out and be taught knowledge. Hey, here's 37 steps to freedom. Here's 16 things you need to achieve greatness. Here's, you know, read this book, and if you do these 8 things, you're going to be whatever. And I realized that's like teaching a guy, MMA guy, like, hey, here's 100 different kicks. And if you see this scenario and you use kick number 14, you're going to win. Well, the reality is it's too much to process. In squad leader school and in the military, we teach knowledge really, but what we're really teaching is fluency. Be brilliant and good at the basics. Like if you can change a mag 1,000,000 times, 1,000 times, 100 times, whatever it is, when you get in combat and suddenly in the friction of combat or business, things get hard, you'll be able to get your magazines changed and still have ammo without thinking about it because you did the reps. Well, okay, so translate that to business. So I started looking at that and said, well, that's fluency. If I only learned 5 kicks in that MMA example, but I do them so well that I can bend them and adapt them to a changing environment, like I'll be able to respond faster. I just need to see something that's close for one of my 5 kicks and I'm in. And then I'll adjust it mid-flight because I've done it so many times I'm comfortable. Most training programs.
That's so awesome, by the way.
Most training programs try and teach you the right answer to every scenario. So then you got to, like you go to sales training. If the client says, you know, I like fishing, you now know you can use the fishing clothes, but you got to wait for it. So you're like, well, you didn't say it yet. And then you're not really present. Yeah. You're not really there. If you
become robotic. There's no adapting and overcoming.
Fluent, if you are fluent at the basics, then you can be present.
Yeah. By the way, I really, really love your online program that you have.
Good. Go check it out.
No, everyone that's actually really, really fun. Those of you who want to learn awesome leadership, man, it's really interactive. It's cool. It's like something I've never seen before. When you go on there, and it almost feels like you are teaching the class, and as I'm giving a right answer, a wrong answer, you're telling me instantaneously like why it was right or why it was wrong. And it's actually very, very cool.
Ah, cool, man.
But I didn't like when I was getting them wrong. I kind of felt like, but I kind of did it on purpose. I admit a little bit, just because it was like, it was just like the most stupidest question you could ask, right? And you're like, that's a good one, but let me tell you the reason why it's not the right answer.
Yeah, that's now you're back to the officer enlisted, like, yeah,
because you don't want to tell them, hey, you're fucked up, Devil.
Yeah,
hey, I'm
like,
just,
at some level as an officer, you're not allowed to snap your fingers and go, come here, Blueberry. Like you can't.
It's funny because a couple of the answers are so off, right? Like there's a couple of them there that like, come on, man, that's not the answer, but I just wanted to click it anyways.
Yeah, just try it. It's okay. I didn't see your report card. No,
good.
But so I was paying guys to teach all these great solutions, and then I realized it's not knowledge, it's fluency.
Yeah.
And if it's really fluency, what are the core things? And I broke down and looked at, okay, it's squad leader school. Like shoot, move, and communicate. That's what it is, right? So do you know how to shoot? Whatever your industry is, do you know how to do it? Well, get good at it. And then once you got that, move. Like, are you marketing? Are you getting out there? Are you getting the word out? Well, what does that take in your industry? Like, do you have to go to networking? Do you have to get on a stage? Do you have to, whatever, right? And then communicate, like, how are you sharing all this so that, you're getting the funding, you're getting the invoicing, like put those pieces together.
Yeah.
I put that together as a class on a dare. It's been about a decade, and I teach leadership, and I do it for big video game companies, big banks, big construction, healthcare.
And I saw your Instagram. And so what is it that you do with the teams? I know I saw a couple of them where they're breaking up into 3-man teams or something, right?
Well, this is all
and then I saw on the table, you almost had like, I couldn't really see it, but you almost had like tanks out or something.
No, I do have tanks out.
You do?
Yeah, I do have tanks out. So we think, because it's popular and it's fun to say that we're big participatory or delegatory like people, right? We think that's our leadership style. If you ask somebody, rarely you'll find people who say, oh, I'm a teller. I make people do it my way. And then sometimes you'll find the sellers who are like, I'll make you want to do it my way, like the Ken Blanchard steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get people in my class to talk about what style they are. And the vast majority are either delegators or participatory or whatever. And then we create a game, a tactical decision game. We have a map, and we have toy tanks, and we break into teams. And then we give them a mission. I'm their general, telling them how to do the job, right? And then they have to come up with a strategy. So they're doing something they've never done before. It's civilians standing around a map table trying to come up with tactics. And most of the time, even if they were like, oh, I'm a participator, I love when everyone gets to collaborate. You're like, okay, so there's 4 of you on a team. None of you have played this game before, barely understand the rules. I explained them to you fast. I asked you what your orders were, and everyone goes to telling. Every time. Like not every time, but most of the time, right? And so we play this game to say, you might think you're participatory, but when the stress is on, when everybody's looking at you, suddenly you're a performer and you're telling. And then we use the tactical decision games that we did to learn tactics. We're doing it now to learn leadership, or to learn you're not the team player you think you are, to go back to what we started with. You're an individual, and you think like an individual, and you work like an individual. And if I promoted you to today and gave you a team, you would do more individual work until you burned yourself out and you either had to quit or I had to fire you because you weren't getting it done. Unless you can make that mental switch to thinking like a team player, like a leader, right? And it's hard because, again, the sirens call, the movies, the books, the guy down the hall leading. Like we see the wave tops of their leadership, and we just assume that it's something that it's not. Like we're trying to live up to an ideal that doesn't really exist. And humility and empathy, which, by the way, are not Marine Corps traits, but they ought to be. They should be as part of JJ Tie Buckle. Those things must exist if you're going to step up to that next level. Definitely. If you want to play like a pro, step up and start to figure out, like, how do I take myself out of it? And that moment came to me when I was teaching classes. I was years into my classes. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what I'm doing? I'm commanding. I'm telling. I stand in front because I got the clicker. I got the PowerPoint. Right? I know what's coming on the next slide, and I'm spewing out information. And that was the day I said, I need more games. Yeah. And so every class, like there's a key concept, there's an experiential thing, a map board, a blindfold exercise, a stick game. Like we do a bunch of different stuff. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards we do the after action and unpack what it meant as a group discussion. But like my slides went from, 80 slides for an X hour class to like most of my classes are about 10, 15 slides max now, because most of what we do is hands-on experiential, and the virtual training, same thing.
So,
Like,
so what do people, what can they expect to get when they sign up for your online stuff?
well, the online stuff is great because that is that 1% improvement. If you're doing it right, you buy an annual subscription, and you go to the website commandready.com. It's free. You get 30 days. You get 4 or 5 classes. You log in. You create an account. There's no big spam bot thing. You're not going to get flagged with emails. But try it out for 30 days, and then if you like it, join us for a year. So you join as an individual for a year, or you get your whole company to go. And subscriptions are relatively inexpensive. But what you do is you set a calendar and say, hey, every other week on my phone, on my laptop, on my desktop, whatever, I'm going to watch 1 8-minute video. And you start with understanding leadership, and you build your understanding. And then you move to accountability, and then you move to taking action, and then you move to like the trust building or the de-escalation or the critical conflict. Like there's chapters on everything. There's hours of content on there. But don't try and sit down and watch it all at the same time. Like watch one, and then for the 2 weeks in between viewings, talk about it. Like if you watch the thing on perspective, go back to work and say, well, shoot, am I looking at things because I've always looked at it this way and it's always sort of been like that? Or am I looking at things with an eye for, could it be better? Could I change it? Could action make this work out nicer, right? And if you talk about it, you're more likely to do those things. Like the things you talk about are the things that you will achieve and knock out. It's the words of affirmation. It's all that positive, happy stuff. But the truth is, if you're discussing it, you'll start living it again. And so even if you're a vet and you know all the military stuff, buy an annual subscription. And then, it's not meant as a sales pitch, but get into something that forces you to remind yourself of an idea and then talk about it. Because if you're sharing those ideas, you'll start living them again. And the day you start living them again, beard or no beard, is the day you start changing your action. And the day you wake up and go, you know what? I could do one more thing. Like I can add another, because you'll start leading it as a team leader, not as an individual who's just packing, 24 hours into a 24-hour day.
Did you notice the beer jab again?
That wasn't a jab. Now I'm saying it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's
No,
good.
it's time.
I'm just kidding.
I get it. I got to go pick up a Mach 3.
I would do it.
Hey,
but yeah,
do you know how expensive Mach 3s are nowadays?
Man.
Shit.
But taking a step back, like, so that's really key. That's the idea. Like going back to what we were talking about earlier, is when you take everything that you learned, that you develop from the military, and live that again. That's the thing that we forget. But the moment that we can step up, have that discipline, and take action, bring in what we learn from the military, that's when we start achieving a life of greatness.
I personally, we all came in for different reasons, but the reality is the military is not a reflection of society. It's a subset of society. These are people at some level, whether you wanted it for the GI Bill or for the challenge, at some level, you were able to wire yourself for service. And the idea that with discipline, you could achieve more, whether it was just getting the GI Bill and getting to go to college, but you had that in you. So tap back into that.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Tap back into that.
Powerful.
Do something.
Yeah. If you're listening, that's invaluable right there. Do you want to create a life of greatness and you want to be happy? Break out of your comfort zone. Start building your self-discipline and getting back to the position when you were in the military.
Get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, again, we're organisms, right? And we're trying to find comfort. And the second we get comfortable, that's when you start dying. So get uncomfortable. And that means commit to something every morning that you're going to do a little bit different. Commit to learning. Get your brain going, because your body can't last as long. Like your brain is what's going to make the difference. And that's like, go start something.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Start a business, start a club, start a group. Hell, the big one that I love that I hope sweeps the nation, find 5 of your buddies, find a place with a fire pit, burn wood and stand around it and tell stories once a month, once a week, whatever. Vent, get it out, share, connect. Because the solo story of the guy we started off that walks into the VA and says, I need help. You're too slow. And then walks out, goes to his garage and takes his life. Stop it already. Go find some people, circle around them, look each other in the eye and tell stories over fire, because we're tribal at our deepest parts. We've got 35,000 years of campfires. We got 8 years of iPhones. Like, go make a fire safely, right? And share a story. Do it, That's
amazing.
how we stay. That's how we live. That's how we excel. Like, do that.
Thank you. Thank you for
Awesome.
being on here today.
Awesome.
Yeah, you've been amazing.
It was a long chat.
No,
Sorry,
this is,
everybody.
no, this is
It's all
great.
good. Yeah.
I think
very-
that, man, this is gonna be so beneficial to everyone.
I hope so.
So you are on. Okay, so you have a couple Instagrams. What do you want to?
Everything's command ready.
Command
One
ready.
word.
Command
Command ready.
And we're gonna
CommandReady.com. Command ready on Instagram.
We'll
Command
put this
Ready
on our
Twitter,
Instagram,
Facebook, all of it.
that way everyone can
Yeah.
get a hold of you. We'll also put the link up so they can try out the 30 days.
Yeah.
And give Command Ready a shot. I recommend it. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. You guys are doing it. You bought it.
Yeah, it's
Like
amazing.
they're on a subscription. Their company does. Everybody who's related to them. If you want to do that, you got a small business, get all your employees on it. If you're a vet, have your employees watch these videos so that when you talk to them, they don't go, what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Try it out. It's good.
Thank you, sir.
It's good.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here. And yeah, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, those listeners, we're here. We're spreading a movement, creating greatness after service. So feel free. Actually, don't feel free. Your duty is to share this with your fellow brothers and sisters. Hurrah.
Hurrah. All right, guys. Out.
How to earn your living? How to earn your living? How to earn your pay? How to earn your pay? I reply as a point to my bond. I reply as a point to my bond. I earn my living on a killing squad. Earn my living on a killing squad. Hoo-yah!
Veterans Battalion.